the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this lecture of General Science. Firstly, we'll be discussing the syllabus that we'll be covering throughout this session. Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6, Chapter 8, Chapter 10 and 11 of your book of General Science. Firstly, today we will be going through Chapter 4, that is Man and Health. Okay, so in this chapter, we'll be discussing about human health. As the name suggests, man and health. So, food and its major components that help in the development of a human body. So basically, we'll be discussing about water first. What is the necessity of water? Why is it required for us to survive and have water in our life? What is the necessity? What is the need of water in our life? Basically, water is, we are made up of 60% of water. Our 60% of the body weight of a human is based on water. So you can imagine how necessary is water for our life. So basically, we cannot survive without drinking water. Why is it so? Why does our body requires water so much? We will be seeing through this chapter basically the actions that our body performs, basically to maintain the body temperature, to maintain the reactions inside our body, the breakdown of components, the building up of components is basically the requirement here that we are talking about. So if we talk about water, it is so necessary to help in chemical reactions to occur inside our body that we cannot survive without water. Every chemical reaction in our body is processed basically through water. So let us discuss the essential components. Water is, as I've basically discussed here, that it helps us to absorb nutrients from our food that we eat. Our body is made up of water, majorly made up of water, 60%. So it is very essential for our processes to function properly, to work properly, to get energy from the food we eat. Okay, so it also helps in throwing out some waste from the body. It helps in excretion, the process of excretion, urination, sweating. All of these are the processes that are helped by water. Okay, source: we drink water directly as well as we receive water from milk, tea, fruits, vegetables, cold drinks. So there are various sources of water that we have. Basically, water is also contained in fruits that we eat, food that we eat. So it is a major component of life to survive. Not only humans, but life. Coming on to the next topic, that is carbohydrates. Carbohydrates basically are, what are carbohydrates? Basically, they are very necessary for our body. As we see here, what is the definition of these carbohydrates? Basically, there are the components, the components that are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So the main components that are made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in our body are known as glucose, sugars, or starch. So that is the definition of carbohydrates. These are basically found in cereals, sugar, rice. These are the examples that are given here. How do they function? What do they help in? They basically strengthen your body, they provide energy. Okay, so they are the cheapest source of energy. Why are they known as the cheapest source of energy? Because they are very inexpensive and very we found they're found in regular food items like sugar, honey, bread, right? So moving on to the next topic, that is fat. What is fat and how is it necessary for our body? Why are we discussing fat in our basic components of human? Basically, fat is very necessary for us to survive. Now, you would be thinking that fat is basically not necessary because no one wants to be fat, right? No one wants to be called chubby, basically. So, moving on to the necessity of fats, let me tell you guys that fats is basically very important for our life. Why? Because of these fats, our body gets energy, our muscles are strengthened through it. What is the function of fats? Basically, here it's written that it is the component of basic source of energy, right? So fat is necessary for us, but for a limited source, like for a limited quantity, right? Okay, so source of fat. What are the sources of fats? Oil, ghee, butter, milk, eggs. These are the sources of fats, right? Test of fats. How do we test them? Basically, they are there is this test of fats given, that how do we know that this is basically fat or not. Okay, so coming on to other products, I will tell you that cream or corn oil or butter, these are the examples of lipids. Lipid is basically another form of chemical combination of fatty acid and glycerol. So this is some extra knowledge that I am providing here, that fats are basically a heading, and in under that heading comes lipids. Lipids are made up of fatty acid and glycerol. So these both the combination of these become lipids, right? So lipids are also found in corn oil and butter and ghee that I've just mentioned. These are the source of soluble vitamins. What are soluble vitamins? That dissolve in your body, right? Okay, moving on to proteins. Right, proteins are basically one of the most abundant chemical substances that our body requires. Okay, proteins are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur, as I've mentioned here. What are the sources of proteins? How do we get proteins? Proteins are basically obtained through egg. Egg is the major source of protein. Egg, fish, meat, these are all protein. Ground beans, nuts, pulses, right? So what is the requirement? What is the function of protein? Why does our body requires protein? Basically, our body needs to repair, right? Protein is do you know that our hair is made up of proteins, our nails are made up of proteins? So basically our body needs to repair. Our skin is made up of proteins, a lot of proteins. So basically we need to repair our skin, right? If we get injured, we need to heal our skin. We want it to get healed. So basically we won't be there won't be any trouble if we are acquiring good quantity of protein that is required by our body. So our body will get healed properly, right? So the function of proteins is basically to repair our body and building up of our body basically. Then there's this test of proteins that I'll not be discussing this for now. Let it be till here. Okay, now these are some of the assignment questions that I want you to do. Some of the name major components of food. Okay, and note on carb, you need to mention the major components of food that I just discussed. Okay, and you have to write a note on carbohydrates and proteins, and I want you to do your research thoroughly and write about carbohydrates and proteins extra, and give extra information that I haven't discussed about, because these are very vast topics and you can get a lot of information about these topics on internet. So I want you to do your research. So that's it. Thank you so much.